Afternoon. Welcome to K-12 Education Budget. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Committee, we do have a couple of bills that we're going to have a hearing on today. And so we'll just go ahead and get started. We'll invite our reviser, Nick, to go ahead and give us an introduction to House Bill 2261.
Okay, committee, I hope you have a lot of time allotted for me. So House Bill 2261 would make a pretty succinct and simple change in one statute of the Kansas statutes annotated. Current law prohibits in KSA 72-1137, it prohibits any school district from providing any compensation to a Board of Education member. What this bill would do is it would strike that provision and authorize boards of education of school districts to compensate their board members.
Nick, do you happen to know when this was when it was added to statute?
Oh, I'd have to pull the statute book real fast to see.
That's okay. You can actually get back with us on that. I'm just curious how long it's been there and really curious why it's there. But any other questions for our reviser? All right, thank you. Well, for our reviser? Sure, Nick.
Maybe relevant, maybe not. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Nick. Does a State Board of Education members, do they have a salary?
Oh,
they do get a daily compensated rate. I think it's $88 a day.
Is that a per diem or is that a salary?
It's not a salary. It's a compensation rate. Is that right, Representative Hill?
yeah, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I could pull the statute for that authorizes that.
All right, just curious. Thank you.
Sure. So I bet it's the per diem as well, because many of them have to stay overnight. And so, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, committee.
All right. Thank you. Committee, we are opening our hearing on House Bill 2261, taking testimony on this little bill that could make a difference. And we have one testimony that is neutral. It is Jim Carlskent from the United School Administrators of Kansas. Feel free to talk as long as you like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to be here. Too often I come to you as a committee and we oppose bills, but today we're neutral. Now, after what I say, you might think I oppose it, but I just want you to, be thinking about some things, and it won't take long. Currently, as Nick and the chair said, why is it this way? And I don't know when it took place. As long as I've been involved in schools, that it's the board members it's been a volunteer type thing. They get paid for when they go out if they have some mileage to turn in or something like that. And I think it's a good setup. But in Kansas we have 286 school districts. They range in vast sizes, and when you go to a school board meeting, and the duties of school board members vary quite a bit. So I can see where a school district or a school board member might want to be paid because of the involvement, because there's some school boards that they have, at least 2, sometimes more meetings a week, plus they have committee meetings as well. And so there are responsibilities. Then at the same time, there are those board members or board meetings that in the school districts, and I've been on those in those districts where you'd have a board meeting, you get the packet out to the people. That was back in the old days when they were, paper packets. You send them not electronically. And as the board member walks into the board meeting, they're opening the packet. Now, they didn't spend a lot of time getting ready for those. So I guess my point is, there's a vast difference on what board members, what their responsibilities are. And just keep that in mind as you're working, this bill if it comes to be heard. And another thing, as a former superintendent, especially in the smaller districts, superintendents are the chief negotiator for the board. And will make it difficult. I would foresee, or I would have the concern that superintendents would be on in a difficult spot because of the fact that if a board member is getting paid, and it's a lean year, back in the days when, there was no raises, no more money coming in, and the teachers are negotiating, well, the board member's getting paid, why can't we get a raise in our salary? So there could be some concerns there. And, the reason why people, I think, receive no pay. Now, I know you as legislators, because I've been there, you feel like you don't receive much, $88.66 a day. So, but, like state school board members, they would receive that too. How would a board member, a board member could take advantage of the fact that, well, I got to go, let's say they live in Salina. Well, I got to go to Kansas City or Topeka, and for a day, and, you might have per diem set up, like what, you receive as pay. It would be difficult to set those things, and I would be fearful that it could be possibly taken advantage of. So anyway, those are some of the concerns as a former superintendent that I would have that keep in mind when you make your decisions on this bill. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to stand. Since I'm the only one testifying, I guess.
You can stand.
Yeah.
Okay. Committee, what questions do you have? Representative Estes.
I'm thinking about some of the objections that you raised, and the first one, I got what you were saying, but I'm familiar with my county, and for many years when times were lean, they would vote for raises for their employees and freeze their salary. So and I think of ourselves as far as attending other meetings and what gets covered. We have a detailed process that we go through, and many organizations do, about what's going to get approved, and if you want money, reimbursement for travel and so on. Don't you think that some of the things that you're concerned about could be handled through policy?
Yeah, yes, Representative, it could be handled through policy. I'm just raising those as a concern that depending on the school district, it could make a difference. So you're right, though. Yeah, it could be handled.
Thank you.
Looking for questions. Okay, well, I do have a question. So do you think that sometimes the expectations or that it's a volunteer position would perhaps just create the situation that you talked about? Somebody just shows up and they open their packet, they don't look at their email, whatever it might be, because it is a volunteer, and so they slip in. Do you think that paying someone could at least give them the sense that they have a greater obligation to be informed?
Yes, that could exist, but a lot of it would depend on how much you could pay them, too.
Sure.
If it's just a small amount, they say, geez, I'm not hardly getting paid for this. But I have found most board members and even legislators, you're here because you want to help people, and board members want to help, want to do what's best for the community and do what's best for kids. Representative Wins, you're still on the board, aren't you? So, and that's what I think, we see across the state. People want to do what's best for kids. That's why I think most board members, run. There's a few that run because they've got an axe to grind with somebody in the school district, the one issue person, they want to can the football coach or whatever. But that's not real common, thankfully.
Okay, since you're the only one, just stay, because I want to have this little bit of a quick dialogue here before we go on. But Nick did say that this was placed in statute in 1973. And so I kind of want to compare it to municipalities. We don't have this restriction on municipalities or counties, of course. Counties being often the best paid of our local government when you talk about elected positions. When I was a mayor, I got $1,000 a year. Now, that's very minor. If you are a mayor in Wichita, I think it's probably $80,000. I don't know what Kansas City or some of the places up here would be. But sometimes it's an appreciation. It's $1,000, and if you divide that out by the number of hours, it's nothing, inconsequential. However, it's appreciation. And so I think that this bill is intended to allow for that appreciation and recognition. Any district could or may or may not implement it. A individual board member may or may not accept it. But what I'm hearing is, for example, larger school districts, they're putting in 30 hours a week. And that's a lot. You can barely hold down a regular job if you're putting in an additional 30 hours a week. And if our issues are complex enough or important enough, and I think our kids are important enough, then maybe giving them the latitude that they can, because they can get as exhausted as our teachers can get. And so that's the other side. Would you like to comment on any of those items?
I totally understand that, and what I indicated that, especially the larger districts, they have at least 2 meetings a week, then they have committee meetings that they're on too. Yes, they can very well get to that. And I guess, the way the bill is written, they have the option as a school district. And if you're a small school district, you have 1 meeting a month and they last, 2 hours, okay. But there's a lot of differences across the state.
Sure, and most municipalities don't pay hourly. They pay by a meeting, or they pay by an annual sum. So any of those could be implemented. Any other questions for Jim? He's doing such a great job. Hate to see him go. No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponent, opponent, neutral testimony for House Bill 2261? If not, I do not believe, committee, that we have any other written testimony, but our reviser's words and the testimony from Jim are uploaded on the S Drive, and so they're available to you. All right, I will close the hearing on House Bill 2261, and we're moving on to House Bill 2271, and Nick's going to give us a really thorough overview.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So committee, House Bill 2271, this would amend the open enrollment provisions that were passed last year in House Bill 2567. What this would do is it would amend those open enrollment provisions to allow a school district, or actually require a school district, to treat any non-resident student who is a student who has a parent or guardian that's an employee of that school district as if they were a resident student. In other words, that student who has a parent or guardian who is an employee would be authorized to attend that school district even if they didn't live within that school district. Therefore, that student would not be subject to the open enrollment lottery process that was established under the bill. If there are no open seats available, they would just be authorized to attend that district. And Madam Chair and committee, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Nick? Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doesn't that allowance already exist for those employees that live, especially on the borders? I remember discussion that those parents who work in the district, own businesses, already have the ability to enroll their students in those districts.
There's nothing in the open enrollment law that specifically speaks to
I'm
that.
not talking about the open enrollment law, I'm just talking about the other statutes, the other, they have this ability.
Yeah, but the open enrollment law kind of changed up how school districts are treating non-resident student enrollment. So yeah, school districts might have had policies to allow that type of enrollment within their own district, but the open enrollment law kind of changed up the specifics of that, and essentially it requires any non-resident student to submit an application to the school district that they wish to attend, and if there's open seats available, they're in. If there's not open seats available, they'd be subject to that open seat lottery process for that grade level.
So the open enrollment law, madam, specifically negated the ability for, that's a yes?
The open enrollment law says that if you're a non-resident student, generally, There's a couple of exceptions in here, and this bill would add one more exception to that. If you're a non-resident student seeking enrollment in a non-resident school district, you have to submit an application, and then if there are not open seats available for that grade level, you would have to have that application, and the school district would conduct a lottery process for,
Okay, no
for
problem.
the students to enroll in.
I think what you might be referring to is that districts right now have policies that allow that to happen, but I don't think the statutes, I think the statutes are silent on that outside of this. Is there any statute, I think, were you saying, are there existing statutes that would allow that? But the way I understand it is that's just an individual district policy. But maybe not.
What I'm
Nick?
saying is, over the years, we've had that conversation. We've had that conversation with specifically families who worked in those border communities. Now, what you're saying, which is, I have no issue with it, what you're saying is that there either was not a statute that guaranteed it, but I can't believe there wasn't some language that permitted it. But no problem. I mean, I'm not questioning. I'm just saying, you know, this is happening. So if we're cleaning it up and getting rid of any questions, great.
We have a revisor looking right now to see if there's anything out there. Can you think of anything, Nick, that would have required it?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, we would have tried to amend that and revise that law in addition to the open enrollment stuff when we were doing that. But if we find something, we'll bring it to your attention, certainly. And
Okay. Also to know, in this committee last year, Tamara, do you want to go first? Did you have something? No? Okay. What I was going to say, in this committee last year, we did not have the lottery version. That was the Senate version. And so I'm not sure what we had included, but it was something that we overlooked ultimately.
It wasn't last year. It was over the years.
Yeah. But I don't know of any particular provision that would require districts for open enrollment have been free to do as they wanted in the past. And there have been no requirements of accepting. Tamara.
The only thing that I will note is in 2017 and 2019, when the legislature was sort of revamping the school finance formula, in the definition of student in the school finance formula, there was a lot of discussion of students who are attending schools that they're not residents of. And there was actually a stair-step provision at the time that has since been removed because we hit the end of that stair-step. And so actually in current law, a student enrolled in a school district who is not a resident of Kansas shall be counted as half a student.
And I do remember that because we had a lot of debate on the out-of-state students, but not out of, let's say, your city.
Well, again, it was not last year. It was not in the context of open enrollment, but that conversation has occurred. It could have been 20 years ago, but it was a guarantee to those parents who lived in another state, had property across in Kansas, and or worked business, whatever, just satisfying their need to and their desire to enroll their students. So it obviously was a conversation that allowed them, but it was in the context of the legislature. So it wasn't granting individual districts, but that they had the ability to do it. So.
No, I think Tamara cited that. Wasn't related to whether or not it was a teacher or student. It was literally somebody that may have lived in Colorado and that wanted to attend. It was closer. It was always a proximity thing, and so we allowed it. And so that is correct. It is in statute. It was in statute. It's stair-step.
It wasn't about proximity. It's about the parent who had the business or but it doesn't matter because it doesn't conflict. I'm just saying the practice has occurred. We have discussed it. We're aware of it, and fine and dandy.
Any other questions for the revisor? All right, thank you, Nick. And committee, we do not have. I would like to address. Yes, absolutely. Let me, real quick, we do have some written testimony, and then we're going to turn it over to Representative Johnson. He introduced this bill, and so he's going to share some comments with us on this. We have a KNEA, a KPTA, and a USD 262, which happens to be Valley Center. Neutral for Valley Center, proponent for the KPTA, and KNEA is neutral. So that is in our S drive. And Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also would like to cite the Director of the Budget in his comments. The enactment of House Bill 2271 would have no fiscal effect on state aid to school districts. So that's not going to impact any of the districts in terms of finance. This open enrollment took a lot of time last year, and then it was passed. And the first inkling that I had that there were questions about employees is when I attended a meeting in Eudora with a number of superintendents and school board members, and the issue was brought up. Somebody's legal advisor had told them that they needed, or they would have to have family members go through the lottery process. And that was never the intent for any of the members that were on this committee, but we didn't really address that. And so when I met with this large group, it was Green Bush meeting, and I said, I discussed that with them, and I said, it is important that we do protect our teachers. I'm still a teacher, and I know many of our educational locations depend on bringing new teachers in with the concept that their children can come with them. I have several friends that live in and around, and it is both helpful to them getting the kids to school. They get to be part of that district. And so it's a benefit to school districts in terms of employment, and I would just strongly recommend it, and that was the reason when we met, and I asked our revisor, Nick, if he could address this, and very simple. So I hope that we can all support this one. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, committee, any other? Representative Estes.
I seem to recall us last year saying that we wanted to make sure that this could happen, and we kind of left some things less defined so the district could do this. So if this helps the district to feel more comfortable, I think it's a great thing for us to do.
Thank you. Any other items for this bill? No other testimony for this bill? All right, committee, I will go ahead and close the hearing on House Bill 2271. And with that, if there are no other items, I'm looking around. No, all right, we're adjourned. Have a good evening.